Hey, this is James Hammer, and I'm here with my son Jonah. Hey, Jonah, say hi.
Hello, hello.
Hey, and we're here. We're really just starting with this kind of concept that we've been talking. How long, Jonah, have we been talking about?
Way
this
too
idea?
long, honestly. It's been, I would say, over a year. Definitely over a year. Maybe even longer than that.
Definitely over a year, and the idea, what this is really born out of is, I've just been so blessed in life to have the opportunity to be able to spend time with you guys and do different things. One of the things that I really enjoy the most in spending time together is when we get in a car and go somewhere and we're listening to music and we're talking and I tell you, it seems like every time we have these really amazing conversations and as we've kind of in the last couple of years we've kind of done that and talked about it. We have talked about this a lot of times about creating something where those conversations come to life. And I look at it like almost like a posterity thing where I feel like in engaging in this conversation with you, that you and I are going to be able to explore really the history of our family, my history, your mom's history a little bit, and then really kind of discover the differences between the world that I grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s versus the world that you grew up in a little bit later in the 2000s. And so, just the idea that you and I would be able to capitalize and to kind of talk about all these things that we generally talk about in these conversations, I'm just really excited about that, an opportunity to be able to do that. And who knows where it'll go. It's going to evolve and change. What are your thoughts?
It can go many places, I think, honestly. And yeah, I really like the idea of exploring the differences in our generations and what we went through, the different, I don't know, I'm sure we went through a lot of the same things and probably a lot of different things too. I think one of the biggest differences has to be cell phones, definitely. I think that changed a lot of things in general.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Cell phones changed the world. I think about cell phones being available right about the time that Jesse and Isaac were being born. I think I want to say I maybe had a pager with you and Noah. Like pagers were around back in the day, And so your mom, if she felt labor pains or whatever, she'd hop on the phone and call the pager number, and I get a page that would be her number that I needed to call her. So that was, I think I'm pretty sure that's how the first couple of pregnancies kind of worked out like that with pagers. But yeah, then the technology and of course, you and I both know that technology has advanced so much in the last 30 years and influenced so many things. And there's so much to talk about in that respect. But I mean, that's not all we're going to talk about. But I really want us to explore a lot of different ideas about, kind of growing up and kind of where we came from and really leave sort of a lasting history of our family and the experiences. At some point, we'll get into some trauma that, I mean, not the specifics of the trauma, but just how my trauma and my experience of trauma as a child impacted my raising you and your brothers and my relationship with your mom and not in a kind of a trauma bonding kind of way, but just so you understand that people can understand there's a lot that goes on in people's lives and families and staying together is hard because of sometimes, the people you love the most, the people you hurt the worst. And so not that we're going to explore all of those things in detail, but there are definitely things in our in our family and in your growing up and there are probably stories that you've heard little bits of and maybe not the entire story, but we'll explore some of those things, I think. And I'm really interested in just how the differences in our growing up, because you and I grew up very differently, the differences in our growing up, how that really influenced our world perspective in lots of ways. What was, if you could look back and think of like what would be one memory, if you were to go back and think of like one memory from your earliest childhood, what would that be? And just think about what would be from your earliest childhood.
My earliest childhood, very vaguely, I think I remember coming home around 12, like noon, daily, something like that, around daily. And I remember eating Lunchables and watching TV or something like I think we were watching like Judge Judy or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my earliest memory. I don't know when it was. I feel like it was either kindergarten or. Did I even go to preschool?
You didn't go to preschool.
I didn't go to preschool.
Yeah. So it was kindergarten. Yeah, you guys,
Yeah.
you generally had like an AM kindergarten experience where you all went in the mornings and you came home at noon.
That makes a lot of sense because in my head I always thought it was preschool or something like that. But then I was like, is there any way I actually went to preschool? I don't think I did.
Well, when your mom and I were thinking about, I mean, everything moved very quickly for your mom and I, you know.
Of course.
I mean, we met in April of 1991 and we were married in August of 1991. You know, your mom and I, when we were talking about having kids and what we wanted that to look like, we definitely wanted as much as possible for you all to be able to be at home with your mom, you know. Your mom experienced that extensively, but I didn't. You know, I didn't grow up with my mom being home or I mean, my mom and my grandmother, those were my first experiences growing up, first memories growing up, or those relationships with those two very strong women. But yeah, I would go to my aunt, my Aunt Myra's after school during the day. When I was younger, I think I just went over there in the morning when my mom worked. And so I was there at my Aunt Myra's with my cousin Shelly and, you know, my cousin Mike, and, you know, I was there growing up. So it was very much I would go home after mom's work day kind of thing, you know.
So you go home after school. You got home like you said, whenever she would pick you up or whenever she get home or
right. Whatever. Yeah, and I have a lot of memories. You know, I didn't have any siblings during the first few years of my life, and so I have lots of memories with my cousins, you know, going around doing things. And you had siblings very young. I mean, you had a brother already.
Yeah, literally.
And then very
I was
quickly,
never alone.
no, you were not. Very quickly, you ended up having more siblings. Tell me about, I mean, if you can, you know, remember kind of what that experience was like a little bit.
I just remembered a lot of chaos and a lot of, not big problems, obviously, just problem causing and solving. Well, maybe not so much solving, just causing. More like problem causing.
Problem causing, yeah. Across the board, everybody problem causing.
Everyone suffered. Everyone suffered in that aspect.
I think that there was never a dull moment. You know, never a dull moment with you guys growing up. You know, I think about my own experiences. I didn't have any siblings. I was when I would go home, I was there just with my mom and my grandmother. You know, and so those were, gosh, I have lots of memories of going to different relatives' houses. I had a great aunt that I would go to her house and she would make me like peanut butter and honey sandwiches for snacks, you know, and I'd play. And she had this just immense attic that I would roam around in and play in, and it seemed kind of spooky, you know. And I think that probably, Coach, you guys spent a good amount of time outside as kids.
Definitely. I remember playing with sticks. After we watched Harry Potter, going outside playing with sticks and calling them wands and shooting spells at each other, you know. Also finding bigger sticks and fighting with them, yeah. Things like that. And just playing games too, like very, very unorganized sports. Right.
But being outside and being out, you know, I don't know. I know that back in our day, we were all over the place. You know, I mean, when I was probably from fourth grade, because those were really my most significant memories. I have a few memories between like birth and like fourth grade. Very, very few memories, and very distinct memories, but very few of them. But then, you know, when we moved to Caldwell, Idaho, we lived up first on this place called Canyon Hill. And it was like this elevated plateau on one side of the city. You've been to Caldwell. I don't know that I think we've been up to Canyon Hill before.
We might have. I can't really specify any memory of it, but that doesn't mean we didn't. I'm sure there's a lot of things that happened that I don't remember. It's probably when we were like really young, because I remember going there to Idaho when we were young a lot, but we didn't really go as much as we got older, because I know travel got more difficult for us. Right,
and more expensive and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so Canyon Hill was up there, and we lived on Canyon Hill when we first moved to Caldwell. But, you know, it's a plateau, and so off the back of the plateau, it was just like wilderness. I mean, you know, we would go to the back of that plateau and climb down and just play in we looked at it like as a jungle, you know.
For real.
We would just go and play in the jungle back there.
It's a big world right there.
Right?
Especially for a kid.
Right? And do all that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that I know a lot of people talk about is that this generation, your generation, didn't have as much experience with being outside.
I feel like I got kind of a hybrid experience, you know. I feel like in the beginning I was outside a lot, but then when games became more popular and we got games and stuff, technology just started skyrocketing, then we stayed inside a little more. We're just kind of more focusing on that. I know Jesse and Isaac, they I don't think they ever had one day from when they were born where they weren't gaming. Honestly, I think they've always been gaming. So
Right.
So they're obviously really good at it. But like for me, I feel like I got kind of a mixed experience. Even throughout high school, I enjoyed going outside and walking around and stuff. So that never really left me. I don't think. Even now, I enjoy.
Yeah.
And nature and whatnot, going out in nature.
Yeah, well, we'll have to talk about that sometime. Last summer, and we can share lots of pictures and stuff too.
Yeah.
But last summer, Jonah and I went on a cross-country trip. Oh my gosh, it was the most amazing experience, and we had so much fun. So at some point in our discussion here, we'll probably talk about that and share images and share the experience as a whole, because I felt like that was very much a time of renewing and refreshing in our relationship, and so much history there to talk about. If you were to look back now and think of like one memory that that stands out probably from your teen years, per se. One memory that stands out from your teen years. What would you,
many are coming to mind, but none of them are painting a good picture of me. I'll say that. I would say maybe just getting to enjoy the weekends, like whenever, because I wasn't really able to do anything during the week, really. That was like the time to focus on school. Then on the weekends, I remember I get to go out and hang out with one of my friends, Brandon. We had fun times, I'll say that, especially at that age, yeah. But just hanging out with friends and getting away from like I don't know, just feeling like trapped in the house, or like I wasn't out there, because like I said, I was out there like playing in the yard and doing all these things when I was a kid, and then I just had to keep that going. So it was really fun to just go out on the weekends and just hang out with Brandon and just do things I didn't get to usually do, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think we tried to give you not too short of a leash, I guess, Yeah. I mean generally, generally, if we knew the parents of the person you were talking to, or at least had a conversation with them and felt like, that that they were sober and that it was primarily safe,
like they at least had some like conscience, or like some kind of consciousness.
Right.
Like they're not stumbling through life.
Right. We weren't going to have to worry about too much, if you were over there. I think we were pretty generous about, allowing you to stay over at friends' houses. And
definitely. As long as my grades were good, which they were not often. So.
I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. You're struggling with school, and because there's so much connection there between me as an educator and you being in the school where I taught and all those things. We have so much conversation to be able to have, but I want us to be able to start here. I think that when I look back, there's one experience that I come back to time and time again as an adult. If you and this might actually reshape your experience that you want to share, and you're welcome to share it. But one thing I think about time and time again is when I was, 13, 14, I couldn't have been more than 14. We lived in this neighborhood, and our lawns were irrigated through canal water. And through when you irrigate your lawn as opposed to watering or sprinkler systems or things like that, you essentially have a canal that you stop up. And then you place a dam down into the canal that backs up the water, and that water backs up and fills up into the lawn, into the lawn that's there in the neighborhood. So you could irrigate your lawn and your neighbor's lawn. And they open up a valve in their yard, and the water comes up through it. So you essentially, each part of your yard has a valve that opens up, and the water comes up through it. Okay, so. We had this irrigation system, and it went the canal was at the end of our street, just like catty corner across from our house, and it went from there across our street all the way down our street to the end of our street. There was a tunnel, a culvert that the water then would flow through to the next neighborhood. Okay, and so one day. My friends and I, there were probably about 5 or 6 of us, we got this brilliant idea that we were going to go and tunnel through that culvert, that pipe from one side of the neighborhood to the other side of the neighborhood, And we're talking crawling in, very tight space, crawling in and just elbowing through this space from one end of the neighborhood to the other end of the neighborhood. And of course we got through there, no problem. We laughed, it was just one of those things. But then later on as an adult, I came back and thought about it, and I think about it a lot. all it would have taken was one person in the neighborhood, our neighborhood or the neighborhood next, the neighborhood next to us, to come down, open the canal, let that water run through, and the six or seven of us or whatever would have drowned in that culvert or in that pipe. And no one would even have known where we were.
Oh,
we would have disappeared until our remains flowed out the other side of it at some point.
That's a very scary thought, honestly.
I mean, it is. When you think about, the things that you could have done as a child or trouble you could have gotten into. So when you talk about, it doesn't paint me in a very good light. We can be transparent about these experiences and talking about these things.
Of course.
Because there are some things that probably we're going to talk about that aren't going to paint me in a very good light. But
same here.
I'm okay having those conversations because I think that transparency is significant.
It's everything.
So, so did that make you think of any other experiences?
I'm trying to think of anything that'd be like similar to that, where it's just like I look back and I'm like, God, like that's crazy, But I mean, there was one time, okay, with Brandon once again. Okay, so this is a pretty not like super. It's bad. Yeah, that's bad. So there's just one time where, like with him, you know how it is when you're a teen. You just want to feel different. You kind of experiment in some things. I was just I'd be getting high with him a lot. Smoking weed and whatnot. And there was one time, I don't even know how we got into this. Like when I started hanging out with him, it was just me and him hanging out always. And then it turned into this whole thing where he had a whole new crowd of friends, and they were into more intense things than I was really into. Like, I remember one time we went to Walmart and they went and stole a bunch of syringes because they had heroin. I didn't even know they had heroin. And we went back in the car and they all started shooting up around me. And Brandon, he gave me a needle and he was like, "Hey, do you want some?" And I said no. And he actually respected it. But like, I wasn't driving. Brandon was driving and he actually shot himself up with it and drove while he was on heroin. And I could have died. I definitely could have died during that.
Wow.
Without a doubt, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just me sitting in the back seat, in the middle back seat, literally surrounded by people just zoning out, basically, because they were all, they all shot up. Every single one of them shot up.
Well, because you and I both have experience in the drug culture, and my experience was very much similar to your experience. At that point, I have a similar story about. It wasn't heroin; it was beer. We had a party once, so my friends, they went to the store and stole like a case of beer on gunpoint. The guy came running out, and this dude Russell we knew pulled out a gun. And was like, "Don't even think about it." And it's like. You think about those moments or those experiences that just you look back and you go, man, how did I get myself into this mess?
How to get myself out of that?
Right. Well, we'll talk about. I'm sure a lot more of those experiences
without a doubt.
as we go along. But so I think one of the other things to make a comparison of in terms of growing up, you and I, the differences. I grew up very much without a father. You grew up with a father. I think one of the things, I may have been talking a little bit earlier about when your mom and I were talking about having kids, one of the things we wanted them to be able to do was have that time at home with mom. And the other thing was I definitely wanted to be a present father, a very present father, because I did not have a present father. Of course, Duffy, my stepdad, was a wonderful, wonderful person, wonderful dad. We had our growing pains when he first came into our lives and first, figuring out the relationships and everything. But I think I couldn't have asked for a better, stepdad than what I got in Duffy Hammer. And I will always cherish that. It's always significant. So I grew up without a dad. So the experiences that I had were different, obviously, than yours. The main thing I think that I would think would be different is just that complete missing essence of your father.
For real.
Think about my impact in your life or my presence in your life. What if that had not existed?
True.
How much different would your life have been if I hadn't?
I can tell you, for one thing, I would have gotten a lot more trouble. More than likely. For two, I would be very much more broken than I am, I'm sure. And I probably wouldn't be who I am, to any degree, I don't think.
It's interesting because when I think about the boys, Jesse and I have often talked about how similar he and I are. But I think if you get down to the core of it, as far as how we really understand the world and interact with the world, I think you and I have a tremendous amount of similarity in that respect as well.
Definitely. Definitely. We have like a very much so, like, if it's not meant to be, it won't be, you know, but if it's meant to be, I'm gonna make sure it happens kind of kind of energy, you know, towards the world. Mm-hmm.
Right. I sometimes joke about how I try to make things happen just through the sheer force of will, you know,
Just to just
to make it happen. And so, you know, I mean, growing up without a dad, you know, obviously there was a lot of guidance that I didn't have. I mean, interestingly enough, you know, I was growing up in a scenario where it was my mom and my grandmother. What do you remember about Grandma Elma? Do you remember much at all?
Not a whole lot, but I do remember she had the Cowboys and Indians figurines, and I'd be playing with those there. I remember the smell there. There was something she would make, I feel like. I don't know what it was, but it was good. It was very good. But I can't remember what it was because it was just so long ago. I feel like, when was the last time I saw her? Like,
gosh,
when did she pass?
She passed away in 2016, the same year
Yeah,
that
I saw her way before
Grandma
that.
Shirley did.
I feel like I saw her like 10 years before that. Probably.
Yeah. So we were talking about at least it would be at least more than 9 years, more than 10 years, honestly, since you've seen her.
Definitely.
So,
well, even before that, though, I didn't see her for a very long time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Probably the last time we went to Idaho was probably one of the times.
2004 or 5 or something.
Yeah,
like that.
something like that. Maybe
Or
after Grandpa Duffy passed away, because that was 2004.
Yeah, first funeral. I went to his funeral. I know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that might have been the last time I was up there. Wait, was that was that the time where I got upset with you for the beer? Was that time?
I don't remember.
The funeral time?
I don't remember. I don't remember. We'll talk about it at some point as far as you getting upset at me about drinking beer, because I mean, when you guys were growing up, I never drank. Hardly ever.
I know.
You know? And we'll talk about that as well.
I think it's just because
experience.
You know what I blame for that? I'm just gonna say this and we can end it. Dare. I blame Dare.
You blame the Dare program?
Yeah,
the Dare program for turning you against your father. No, I mean, it's a good program and it was important, you know, but it's funny how Noah was the same way. He was very upset if I would drink a beer or something. I mean, he would, after the Dare program, he was very upset about all that.
It's Dare, man.
Yeah.
Making us all keep each other accountable.
Yeah, which is good in some ways.
Yeah, in some ways, it's like you don't know what you're talking about, little kid.
Right, yeah. But it was important to me, you know, to keep sober while you guys were little, and we'll talk about that at some point, I'm sure, more so. So I looking at like the differences in the experience. You know, I grew up with my mom and my grandmother, two strong women in my house. My male influences came from my uncles, my Uncle Dale and my Uncle Marv, and you know I think they. And my cousin Shelley talks about this, how really they because I didn't have a dad, they took it upon themselves, and they were pretty aggressive sometimes about sort of trying to shape me into the man I was supposed to be, I guess. And so I know that during the earliest parts of my life, I experienced something traumatic. I don't know what it was because I don't have recollection of it. I don't have memory of it. But my brain identifies this experience or several experiences in my youth as points of trauma that it won't allow me to remember. And so we'll talk about this as well as at some point, but that was obviously a very vulnerable time for me, being a young boy of 6, of 4. Actually, it was before I was 5, because I think Mom and Duffy got married when I was probably 5 or 6, something like that. And so those very, very early years, something happened that I'm still obviously processing. At least now I know the details of what's happening, and I can process it more honestly, and I can be much more aware of it. But it happened during that time. And I think that for me, I didn't know that I had experienced that, but I knew as a parent that I needed to protect you from something like that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, so, as you were growing up, were there ever times where you felt that you were in danger of being victimized by people around you?
I don't know. I have one memory, but it's, like you said, very vague. But I don't remember it at all.
Right.
So, but I feel like it did something to me, whatever it was.
Well, I feel like we all experience these things, and again, I'm not trying to trauma bond, but just trying to understand how we deal with trauma differently. You know, the other probably most significant experience from my childhood is the day that I stumbled upon a stash of pornography out in a field.
How old were you when that happened?
Well, I was on my way to. I was in 4th grade.
Oh,
okay?
that's very young.
Right, I was in 4th grade, and I remember my friends and I, the trajectory to Washington Elementary School. took us through this field that it wasn't like a field like out in the open. It was between two businesses in kind of a part of Caldwell, Idaho. We would walk through and go to the school from our neighborhood, but it took us right through this field, and there was this stack of these magazines sitting in this field, and my friends and I happened to stumble upon them. Well, you end up looking and
yeah, like, what are you going to do?
Oh my gosh, holy cow! Yeah. So you end up sitting there, kind of turning through pages, and then you're looking at your time, like, how much time can I really spend doing this before like mom, get home and mom's like, why are you late for work?
And you can't tell her.
Why you're late?
You definitely can't tell her why.
No, you definitely can't say why.
There's no way.
And so it was really an interesting sort of interlude in my life where for several weeks it was just like a daily process of walking to school, stopping for a few minutes, looking at this pornography, and just kind of being amazed at these pictures of these women. And it was something pretty tame, like Playboy or Penthouse or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But seeing these women and the curvature and the bodies, and just obviously for what fourth grade is 11, like 10, 9, 10, or 9 or 10-year-old boy having kind of those funny feelings, sort of stirring. I remember when we watched The Little Mermaid. You talking about how Ariel, when she was naked, she made you feel funny.
Yeah. How old was I when I said that? I swear it was like 4 or 5. That was another one of my earliest memories.
Yeah. But you really liked that show, It was
good.
And the way you said it though was just so sheepish. She makes me feel funny. It was hilarious.
I remember being asked what my favorite scene was, and I said when she got naked.
Yeah, you definitely did.
I did say that. Yeah, that's crazy. Looking back, it's just like wow.
That's pretty hilarious. So I had this whole interlude in my life where, for probably 2 weeks, every day I would go back and forth. In the morning, I would leave a little bit early so I could spend a little bit more time there, and then go to school, and then on the way home, stop and look again, and then probably after about 2 weeks, the magazines just disappeared.
They were just gone?
Someone
took the stash.
Well, somebody came along and decided that, either they needed the stash or that they were tired of watching these kids come trek through this field every day looking at these magazines hunched down here in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
But that was a significant turning point in my life, and not necessarily in a good way,
porn I feel like just taints you, but that's a whole... I don't know. Just messing with your head, especially at that young of an age,
At what age did you first encounter it?
It was like 11 or 12, and the first place, you don't even know this. It was at the New Life Church computer.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Noah got in trouble once for using my my school computer.
He was using your school computer?
Yeah, he was trying to look up Britney Spears' boobs.
Do you remember when Jackie and Travis did that long list of all the things that I searched?
Yeah, that long list.
I got my face rubbed in it basically by mom.
Yeah.
I was like, what's all this?
That long list of things that they pulled up on the browser history.
Like,
and they were like,
curiosity is what that is. That is young curiosity.
Right? Definitely. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's interesting you encounter those. I mean, the parallel. I mean, me at 9 and you at 11, obviously there's a little bit of a difference there, but
yeah,
I think that
it's just it can just be anywhere. It can just happen randomly. Like for you, it was a random field, had a random stack of porno mags. Like nobody could control that, except for whoever put it there could have controlled that. But yeah, I mean, and it's so much more accessible now too. It's bad. It's really bad.
Well, and the fact that it's on the internet. I ended up finding, Duffy had a stash of Playboys in the house, and so I ended up finding those, and interesting, just crazy stuff, but
for real.
But you, as far as like the lengths you go to try to hide these things from the people around you,
Yeah. But then when you're sewing, you don't even know how to hide those things.
Right, and I think that
it's so obvious, but you're just like, I did good, and I hid that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you walk away going, oh, I did a good job.
Like you're Dexter or something, like.
Yeah. I think that looking at those things and really. Figuring out how you processed in those moments, how you process those things that you experience and how you dealt with them. I think that you lay these building blocks for your choices, and even at an early age, those building blocks start to influence you. We get this idea really early on that. And it's obviously cultural that there's something wrong with sex, or that sex is dirty in a lot of ways or something. And all of the things that surround sexuality and sexual experiences are so shrouded in this sort of taboo behind like this taboo curtain or whatever.
It's like, don't talk about it, don't think about it.
Right. So
yeah.
So as a young person, it's really intriguing, and when you discover that that's something that really makes you feel good, you look for that outlet because you're trying to cope and trying to deal with the experiences that you're having, and you're finding those things, navigating those things that you try to find that do make you feel good.
Yeah, for real.
And so I think that defining my childhood, I would say those were probably some of the most significant experiences. Is there anything else that you would say that you would offer as probably like one of the most significant or some of the most significant shaping experiences of your childhood or adolescence?
I mean, you couldn't even really call it heartbreak, but when I was like 11 or 12 or something like that, whoever I was going out with, I think her name was Haley Adams, she had broken up with me over the phone, and that just destroyed me. But I didn't understand what a relationship was or any of that. Back then, it wasn't even, I feel like it wasn't even a relationship, but I was devastated. And it's crazy. But yeah, that was an interesting thing right there too. Like some groundbreaking thing. But looking back, it's like, it wasn't even that groundbreaking. It really wasn't.
Right. And you think about how many relationships you've had since then.
Yeah, for real. And I thought that was going to be the last one or whatever, but I was only like 12 or 11 or something. So that's not logical, buddy.
Well, I just want to thank you, Jonah, for taking the time to sit down with me and have these conversations. I feel like each discussion we put together isn't going to be super long. I know we've been at this for about 30 minutes right now.
That's pretty good.
So I think we should be able to condense this down and break it down and put it into some sort of form, and then I'll create a bunch of shorts and put a bunch of shorts out for it as well.
That sounds good.
But
But I had fun too. It
was good. It was a good conversation, and what I would like for us to kind of continue from there. We talk about childhood and those experiences. I think that looking now at maybe next time talking about we've already mentioned that school wasn't your thing, so to speak.
When I was in school, I was never at school. Yeah. That makes sense. I was never mentally there. I was never worried about school.
Yeah. And I mean, my school experience, I was like, I just did what I had to do.
Same.
I mean, the only
last
thing,
minute sometimes. But.
Right? Yeah. The only thing that when I was we'll talk about this next time. We'll talk about this next time.
That sounds good.
So we'll just figure. Yeah, we'll talk about school next time. There are some stories that I should share, and I think there are some stories that you can share as well. Definitely some things that we can talk about school.
A few, maybe a few.
Yeah. So we'll do that. We'll share that for the next our next conversation.
Well, that sounds excellent, Mr. Hammer.
Well, Jonah, I love you so much, and I appreciate you doing this.
I love you too, Dad. It was great. Can't wait to see the next one. Can't wait to experience the next one.
Right. I'll talk to you later. All right. Bye.